Welcome, everyone. I assume you all know why you're here, and it has a lot to do with the turbofan that you're staring at right now. So let's just get right into it because there's a lot to go over. Now, you tend to see a lot of these cutaway models. This is actually from Coda Scale Model on YouTube. They have a channel. It's KOTA Scale Model. And they have a lot of desktop models like this. Now, for me, I'm more of a challenge engineer, you could call it. I want to make things work. So that's what I did. And that's what we're going to get into right now. Now, this model I basically took apart in Fusion 360 and completed all of the uncompleted stators and cases and basically made the model to where you could actually use it as a compressor model. Now, you can't burn fuel in it, but you can use the compressed air to spin the turbine, so on and so forth when it comes to the compressor. So that's what I ended up doing, was basically pulling this engine apart, completing all the incomplete pieces, and then setting up a 3MF file so that you could actually make it a functional working turbine if you were going to use this in an RC application. I don't recommend doing this if you have no experience with these type of models, because depending on the integrity of the model and the print and the materials used, you could injure yourself. So please be careful if you attempt to do something like this. Now, one of the first modifications that I made was this carbon steel rod that I made room for on the inside of both the aft and forward rotator shafts, the main shafts, and the connector. And I did that because I wanted to make sure that if this was FDM printed or SLA printed, that it had the integrity of that carbon fiber rod. And we know that when you're using bearing style rods like this, that they're going to come to you straight and true. Just be sure to check them and make sure that they are straight and true and that they don't have any imperfections that would throw off the balance of the overall turbine. But the idea is that this goes from the blade all the way back to the rear end of the rear drive shaft. Now, this part is an addition that I created that I basically did a Boolean operation where I cut it out of the rear drive shaft. The end of the drive shaft, you can see, sits inside of the bearing that is mounted on the rear nozzle section. And on the inside of that drive shaft, I have this indexed part that actually fits. It's designed to fit over a spool adapter that goes on the engine that I am going to be using, and I'll be showing you that engine and spool right now. So this is the spool that comes with the motor that I typically use. It's a 6S motor that I'm using, but this spool is what I measured that index for. And in the future, I want to clutch this so that I can actually disengage the motor when I start using compressed air or an expanding gas to spin the turbine. And I don't want to use the motor 100% of the time. So for this particular experiment, it's going to be about balance. So I'm just going to be using the torque of the motor itself to actually run the motor. And then later on, I will design a clutch so the motor can disengage if you plan on using a expanding gas to simulate the pressures inside the combustion chamber in order to simulate the overall operation of the turbine. Some of the modifications that I did do to the tail cone was actually these ports, and that is to cool the engine because that's specifically where I mount this 6S engine. And I'm going to show you that engine after I show you the modifications that I did make to the rear nozzle in order to make it adapt to this motor. It's actually made to hold this motor. And here's the modified nozzle section. This one is designed for the 3060 motor that I'm going to show you, and is designed for room for the spool to go through and engage the rear dry shaft, and it is one of the parts that I would have considered printing in metal or a strong SLA resin. But at this point, I am stuck with FDM, so unless I order this part in SLA or some other material, then we're going to stick with FDM until something changes in my workflow as far as what parts I'm getting and where, how I'm printing them, and what equipment I'm using. This is the D3060 2100 kilovolt motor that I am using. You can see the brand name there. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I will leave a link for this motor in the description of this video so that you can get it if you choose to pursue this adventure. Again, at your own risk. I'm not encouraging it, just for safety reasons. I need to say that as a disclaimer. Now, these parts right here are basically what I would consider for SLA printing just because of balance issues. Realistically, a lot of it can be printed in FDM, but if you do have the money, or if you have an SLA printer that's accurate, something like a Formlabs printer, I would use it to print these parts more before FDM. And that's just because of the density variations in extrusions, depending on how many walls you have, infill, things like that. All of those things can lead to balance issues within the part itself, even though it may appear dimensionally accurate. It may not be dynamically balanced due to those extrusion issues that you can't foresee. That being said, I have designed a 3MF file with all of the modified parts, and everything is ready to print. You just have to decide your own settings. Now, that being said, I am going to make these available on my Patreon. Feel free to go over there and poke around. It's fairly new, but it's I'm trying to add some content to it, and this will be one of the things that you can get there. Is a completed version of this turbine model. This is a high pass turbine, not just a standard turbofan or anything like that. Now, I know you're thinking, why do I got to pay for this model? And it's really not a lot to do with the fact that, you know, I want to be greedy. I put a lot of work into it, and I'm trying to bring you all more content. It's costing me a lot. I did choose to do it of my own accord, but I would love the support of all of the people interested in this kind of stuff. And if you do choose to pursue this model, if you try to put it all together, if you have any questions, just let me know. And I will give you a more detailed breakdown of the build of this model, plus the electronics used and how I'm controlling it, so on and so forth, how I plan to apply it in my models in the future. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.